I'm Paquette, from the Bronx, New York, originally from the Caribbean, and I race hill climb. It was actually a dream to have that car. I remember I saw it and I was like, man, I'm gonna get this car. Mind you, back then I had a social security number, no way of getting like a job or a license, nothing. Some friends looked at me like, whatever, bro, you ain't getting that. You're crazy, like how? I just kind of believed that I would eventually get it, and there it is. It's actually rather psychotic to have a full-on race car. It being this slow in a city like New York where there's potholes and destruction of spitters and cars and stuff everywhere, but I love it. Growing up in Dominica, grew up very, very poor. Lived in a shack at one point in my grandmother's backyard. My grandmother had this table in her backyard, and I would sit under it. I had a bucket cover with a stick through it, and I would just pretend I was a steering wheel, and I would drive. That's what it was like there. I then came up to America when I was 7. Driving was just something I always wanted to do. It was only when I turned 18, I had a rude awakening that I couldn't get a license. I wasn't born here, so I didn't have like a social security number. I didn't have any of that stuff. 21 to about 28 and a half, that was actually some of the darker days of my life, because not being able to provide for yourself, not being able to apply for a job and do these normal things that they say you could do in America, it was very debilitating. You can feel so alone, and most of the time it's just you against the world. My whole question was, why does God have me here if it's just to suffer? And so I found myself being in a spot where I just didn't want to be here anymore. And it was a dock, went far out into the water. I was just gonna jump off. Something stopped me that day and made a call to a friend of mine. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be sitting here doing what I'm doing today. So I'm forever grateful and forever in his debt. I had the opportunity to be able to get my social security number and all that stuff. The first thing I did when I got that social security number, I went right to the DMV and I took that test to get the permit. Learned how to drive, got my license, and got the Evo. And c'est la vie. It's gonna sound cliche as hell, but it's because of Fast and Furious. I remember seeing the Eclipse in part 1. I was like, oh my God, I want one. And then I saw the Evo in part 2. That car is only in Japan, but the Evo 8 is here, so I want one of those. This one came out. I actually hated it when I first saw it, but as time went on, more and more people were getting the 8s. And I was like, you know what, I really don't want to be like everybody else. And I started liking the 10s. And then eventually it just became a dream car to me. I had one Evo before this. The Evo was my first car. But you know, when you're young with your license, you do not so smart things, and ended up totaling it. Once it was totaled, I decided to get another one. And this is my second car ever.